and I feel as if I'm drugged or drunk as soon as we're in the basement. I would liken it to anesthesia, which I've had many times going through operations in my life. And I've got an arm over each alien's shoulders as if I'm a drunk and they're helping me to bed. And that's basically what they were doing. My feet, they were moving, but really not doing all the work. They were helping me. And I looked off to the right side, the one on my right, and I thanked him. And he didn't say anything. As we're walking through the family room in the basement towards my bedroom. And so I thanked him again. His response, his exact words are, yeah, if you can believe it or not. That's what he said. Next thing I know, I'm in the bed. I don't remember being placed into the bed, but I'm in my bed, and I hear off to the side one of the aliens say, and he's in an absolute panic. He says, he's coming. We're going to get caught.
Welcome back. I'm here with Sean and Chris O'Leary. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thanks. Thank you, Sean. It's a real pleasure to be here, and we're excited to speak with you. So we had a little difficulty, but we're all settled. We're in.
That's why we're both laughing. Yeah, that's why we're both laughing.
Yes.
So, okay, let's just get started with both of you. Just tell the audience a little bit about yourselves and then how you got into this topic. Not too much detail on the topic side, because we'll get into that.
I'm a retired police officer. I did 20 years in upstate New York. I'm currently retired, enjoying the retired life. How I got into this, I was kind of forced into it. You know, it's no choice of my own. I was, taken against my will and been living it ever since.
And as for me, I'm a comedian, a comedy writer. I'm a fine art painter. So I'm all over the place, but in the arts. And how did I get into it? Same way.
By the way, Chris, you're underselling yourself. That's not what you said the first time.
Well,
it's consistent with what you said the first time, but it's not as it doesn't have the sizzle.
All right. Well, I'm a fine art painter. I have paintings in collections on 4 continents, both public and private collections. I have worked for the Grateful Dead as an illustrator. Jerry Garcia himself hired me in 1993 as an illustrator for Grateful Dead comics. And I've been a stand-up comedian since like Reagan's last term, if anyone remembers him. And I started working right away it was a great time for comedy, and I was able to work with a lot of the greats and people that are, famous today. Some were very young when I worked with them. And I currently write freelance monologue jokes for one of the late night network TV shows, one that I'm very happy to be working for. And of course, we're not going to tie what we're talking about here to them, so I won't mention which one.
Yep. Okay. So you recorded a long episode on the Good Trouble show, and you got kind of a note from a producer or something like that saying that they weren't going to air it. First of all, what happened? And then second, what do you think was the reason why that happened? So the first, facts. Second, speculation.
Sure. I'll start with this if you don't mind. I reached out to the Good Trouble show. I reached out to a few people, their show being one of them, and they got back to me right away. This was back in January of this year. They got back right away. The producer, Allie, they were very interested. She asked me several questions to see if I was legit or not. Apparently she's a segment producer.
I think
segment producer. And, apparently she is able to tell if people are lying or not about their experiences. And they also set up a phone interview with John Blitch, who's done a number of interviews. He was on their show prior to us. And we talked to him a few times over the telephone, and, he apparently gave them the green light.
Yeah, I'm sure they asked him to vet us.
Yeah.
And because Dr. John Blitch has his own abduction experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And we spent about an hour talking that first night, and he was quite happy with us. And there was a mix-up. He wanted us involved.
We've actually stayed in touch with him since. So if anything good has come from it, it's that meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, I've interviewed John. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
He's also Delta, by the way.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating.
Yep.
We're big fans of his, and we're grateful for his friendship. And after the Good Trouble show canceled our episode,
let's explain that a little bit. They got back to us right away. I talked to her. We talked to John Blitch. They wanted an outline immediately. Get us this outline. We need it. So that's what I did. I sent an outline. I didn't hear back. I sent one or two more emails over time. Didn't hear anything for like 4 months. And then all of a sudden I got a phone call and an email saying, "Oh, we'd like to record on Monday."
To advertise on Through a Glass Darkly, email throughaglassdarkly@gmail.com.
What happened between that was when we spoke to John Blitch, he's very enthusiastic, wanted our participation in a couple of projects. We were thrilled. And he said, "I'm going to text you my private email, and I'd like you guys to write some stuff and mail it to me there. So this is my private email." And we said, "Great," because I'm going to text it to you when we hung up. We hung up, we're thrilled, and it never came, the phone number, the text. And we figured that was, take the hint. He just decided not to or whatever. So weeks went by. We never heard back from the Good Trouble show or him until maybe 2 months ago when Dr. Blitch contacted Sean and said, "I texted to your landline."
Yeah, that's what happened.
So that's why I didn't hear back from you. And maybe he passed, that's why we didn't hear from the Good Trouble show. But after the conversation where he apologized and we hooked up again and he talked with Sean for a good time, it was the next day or 2 days when the Good Trouble show, where we want to record you Monday. They were all on at that point. Maybe they thought we ghosted Dr. Blitch and ignored things or whatever. It happens, but it was a simple mistake that Dr. Blitch.
Yeah, but John has Army background just like I do. We don't. If we text you and we don't hear from you in like 24 hours, we'll come back at you, and we keep coming back at you until we get a hold of you. Right? There are people who've still never responded to me. Once every 6 months, I'll send them an email and invite them back on the show. We're not back on, but
right.
But yeah, we don't stop. It's just not in our nature.
Yeah, he wasn't expecting anything immediately back from us, so it did take him a little while.
Yeah, he said
he's busy as well.
But he came back. Right?
He did, a couple of times.
Yep.
And they ran his most recent interview on the Good Trouble show with him and Terry Lovelace. And we were thrilled. We sat there watching it because we had already recorded ours. It was in the can, and then the next week they aired this. And we were just rattling off the similarities in the things Lovelace is saying and Dr. Blitch, and we're thrilled. And then it was probably 2 months before they sent a letter, right? And it was Matt Ford who sent the letter. Just wanted to appraise you on the situation of your episode. After reviewing it, I'm paraphrasing. After reviewing what we recorded, we don't think it falls within the scope of our program. If you'll notice, what we concentrate more is on the news surrounding ufology and the politics. And abductions is something we just don't do unless it's big cases.
Yeah.
So, if things change, we will revisit it. Or if you guys go on to bigger things than us, we may be forced to revisit it. He didn't put that in. That's my own imagination.
Yeah, but that's how it. Yeah, I think. Let's put on the intelligence community lens, right? First of all, what questions did this abductions whisperer ask you?
Well,
vet you.
that's the thing, is he was, in my opinion, completely unprepared. I believe he was under the assumption that we had only one experience. So all his questions were related to that one experience. And we had relayed to the segment producer through multiple emails. It's much more involved than the one incident. And
she had sent us a list of questions, but she had all the information on us wrong. So we spent a good amount of time. Well, no, we're not both cops, and no, this didn't happen, and all that sort of thing. But that abduction that they were interested in is right where we stand.
Right here. Yeah.
And on August 19th, 1996, my family was having a picnic in the backyard, and Sean was sleeping down in the lower level bedroom, or so we thought. Sean worked as a police officer. He was still living at home here, saving up money for his own house. And he worked overnights, so that meant he came home in the morning, and that meant he slept during the day. We were out here waiting to barbecue until Sean came upstairs. But what happened instead was a flying saucer, a disc-shaped craft, if you prefer, started to materialize, come into this world, dimension, or whatever. It was coming through some kind of portal.
Membrane. Yeah.
It was difficult to say. And it was what it was doing was returning Sean from the abduction. He was with them. He wasn't sleeping down there. Yeah, well, when we first saw it, I thought it was very far in the distance because it was almost translucent and it was very faded and blurry. Like if you go to a hot air balloon festival, the balloons that are 2-3 miles away, the colors are muted by the weight of the atmosphere in between you. And it's blurry because of its distance and everything like that. So I thought what we were seeing was a couple miles away. It was not. And as it came in, it became more distinct. I mean, it was kind of wobbling like this. And you could kind of see light through it. And there was a heat mirage effect going on. A heat mirage off the hot road.
Yeah.
It's ripples. It was rippling in every direction. Very similar to a heat mirage. But it became more and more distinct to the point where I could see it was a silver disc-shaped craft. It was spinning. It became more clear, and it was spinning in 2 different directions. Black band around the center. And then it was here. It was bouncing sunlight off it. It was chrome bright. It was casting a shadow. And there were no shadows on it as it started coming through. And when it came through, it had the shadows of where the sun was. This was late afternoon. This was not midnight. It was about 6 p.m. in August. So it was a bright, clear, azure sky, cloudless. And it was happening right in front of us. And so my mom and me, for the first time, we were just witnesses. My mom had been taken since 1959. But anyway, this incident, an active duty police officer returned from an abduction in broad daylight with 5 witnesses. It's an attractive story. And that's what attracted Bud Hopkins to us, right?
Yeah.
And when was that?
2005 when he came up.
Yeah, he came up, right? And stayed with us for 2 days and interviewed the whole family extensively. And,
did he regress anyone? I know he did used hypnotic regression.
That's his thing, and that's what he does. Mm-hmm. And we were very reluctant because our memories, there is a certain stigma that comes along with people who recover their memories from hypnotic regression. It's just an unfortunate side effect of when you're dealing with mind control telepathic monsters. It sounds like a convenient excuse, but that's the situation, and they're very good at it. We recovered our memories on that day when they were bringing Sean back. The aliens completely fucked up, right? It was absurd, and they got caught. And as a result, they didn't get to cover Sean's memories when they brought him back. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I never really got to sleep. They were trying to put me to sleep, but Chris interrupted them in the process. And
while they were bringing Sean back, first of all, it showed up, and I don't want to get into too much detail about it, but they were influencing us by the pool before they even showed up. I was working part-time for the police department, traffic and crowd control, and I was still wearing the pseudo uniform. It's like if you took a real police officer and ripped the important things off it, but I was in a lounge chair sitting back with a perfect sight of where this craft was going to appear in moments. But what I did is I reached over and grabbed a newspaper of the local newspaper. It's a terrible newspaper. I'd never read it. There's nothing in it. We got it for the TV listings. But I opened that newspaper like this. I opened it up and I held it up like this with my arms wide in a ridiculous position. And what it did was it effectively blocked my entire view of the sky completely. And I thought it was strange as I was doing it. I didn't know why. I'm thinking, who holds a newspaper like this? And I remember thinking, I feel like Fred McMurray, the dad from My Three Sons back in the 1960s in a sitcom where he'd come home from work and his kids had a bunch of problems. And he would sit there with his newspaper open, blocking them from interrupting him, in a classic display of poor paternal parenting. And I felt like that. It felt strange. And what happened is my mom said, Chris, there's that UFO you wanted to see, in a teasing voice, because we had been discussing this. It's a thread that's run throughout our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And the way she said it, I felt she was busting my chops.
But you say busting your balls. Use the
okay. Yes, she was completely
busting balls. I got it.
Yep. And I didn't give her the satisfaction of looking up. I held the paper there. Otherwise, I lower, and there's, a Mylar balloon escaping from a neighborhood birthday party, and they'd have a good laugh at me. I wasn't in the mood. But then what happened is about 20 seconds later, my aunt says, wait a minute, what is that? And she was concerned. And my mom responded, well, I don't know. And she sounded confused. So I'm thinking, all right, you know what? This backyard playhouse theater has gone on long enough. But if they were capable of acting like this, I knew they weren't. So at this point, I go, okay, and I lower the newspaper, and in front of us, over our house and the edge of our property, is this craft appearing. I probably missed a minute of it because they were having me block my view with something I would never do. And there were two other points that they controlled me during this scenario. We're watching it. It's just, I could go into the details of how the craft operated, how there was this almost invisible wake coming off of it into the air. It was light purple and translucent. If it wasn't the fact that the sky was so perfectly blue, I'm an artist, a painter, I see colors, and it was like if you had a boat docked and it had an oil leak in the engine, the way it would trail off and drift away, the rainbow oil in the water, it was like that. It was all around the craft. So it was very strange. My mom, my aunt, my cousins, they're completely out of it. They're standing up looking at it like zombies looking at the sun.
The color's interesting. You said it was violet, right?
Yes, it was.
Blue sky. So that's a blue shift, right? So if you're compressing space-time in front of a craft, it shifts into higher frequencies if it's coming toward you. Red shift if it's moving away from you. So,
well,
anyway, just a theory.
I did not know that. I have no idea. what it was, but I will tell you, it was not falling to the ground and it was not floating away. It stayed at that level around it, and there was a thin veil of it around the edge of the craft where it touched our atmosphere. And as another pointless detail, as I'm watching it in that purple, it was almost like bubbling, like boiling water, but it was not spheres of water and bubbles. It was clumps of something, lumpy clumps that were slowly being pulled apart as the wake expanded. We're leaving strands and threads that came back together to form more clumps. It was like boiling mashed potatoes, and I could see it. It was like a magic eye. You remember those posters when you were young where you don't see anything? It's all a jumbled abstraction until you focus your eye at a certain level. And you're like, oh, it's a tiger riding a pirate ship or something. You may be too young, but that was it. It was only when I shifted my focus that I perceived this. So it's getting weirder and weirder. And Mom and my aunt and my cousins are no use. They haven't spoken. In fact, I haven't spoken since it started. But I've stood up and I've walked. I walked under the craft. I went to the edge of our pool. It's 32-foot pool, to the edge of our property where I was much more under the craft. Stood on my diving board and looked up at it. And I saw that at the very bottom of it was a black disc, about the size of Antarctica if it was a globe. And a voice in my head said, don't get under it. Could be dangerous. Like it was my thought. It was like they're able to put thoughts in your head and make you think they're yours.
Again, blue shift, right? When you're compressing space-time, you're pushing things outside of the visible frequency into UV radiation, X-rays, and you go all the way up to cosmic rays as you increase in frequency. But those things are very dangerous for, carcinogenic, all that sort of stuff.
It was a stupid move, but yeah, not my first.
Yeah, it's like radiation. It's basically radiation, exposure to radiation.
Travis Walton went up and touched his or something like that, or got close enough to his event. But so Chris could have been the next Travis Walton.
Yeah. A far less believable Travis Walton. Oh, a stand-up comedian says that he was taken by aliens.
But non-ionizing radiation is what I think they call it.
Huh.
And in a sense, I think what I was doing was trying to provoke a reaction that I recognized this to be. It took me minutes to figure out that it was a flying saucer. Even though I've been abducted my whole life, what the pattern is when they drop you off, they cover your memories. They don't erase them. They don't wipe your mind, but they make it so you can't access the memory of that abduction or of any other abductions. And then when they come for you, you remember the last abduction and you remember all the abductions. They release all of that to shut it off when you come again. So I'm not sure why. One is I think they don't want to repeat the same questions every time, like it's an endless Groundhog Day for you or something. Mm-hmm. And two, I think they do it so you know what's expected of you, you know the procedures, and you know they're not going to kill you. They know you're going to come back. You know it, and that takes that worry out of the equation. But they control your mind anyway. But as a result of your memory being covered, the next time they come for you, every time they come for you, is a complete shock every time because you don't know what they are. You don't know what they're doing. You don't even know if they're real. They look so surrealistic, like they couldn't possibly walk or be alive. So it's a shock. And so I was in that position, even though they took me first in 1966. By 96, they still had a pretty rock solid hold over all our memories. Even though through the years, there were times we would come and tell the parents, who were those people that were in my room last night and things like that. We would get shot down. But my mother knew more than she let on. Anyway, so there's the craft. And then it lit up. A red light came on around the band, spun around once, slowly. And I'm like, whoa, this is the first proof that it's not just like a floating, powerless thing, like some kind of kooky balloon or something. this red light, like a red traffic light, round, and it slowly crawled around the edge, and then it came back the other side, and then it did it faster, and it went so fast the entire craft lit up like a Roman candle, like a road flare, like a sparkler. There was no silver hull anymore, no gleaming chrome hull that you could see spinning. The thing was, it was orangish pink, and there were needles of light coming off it everywhere. Not like it's throwing sparks, but there were needles. They would come to a point, and a point like thorns or a pincushion loaded with these points of light. I don't want to quote George Bush.
Was it in the process of moving away from you when this was happening?
No, it was cemented right where it was. And things were slowly starting to dawn on me. I was sedate, but not so much as my mother. One is, we initially thought this was just something passing by that we're lucky enough to see. But by this point, it was crystal clear that they were here for us. They have business right here. And they were situated directly 25 feet over our roof. And I start to get panicked. Even though they had me kind of sedate, I'm thinking, this has gone south. This whole thing has gone left. Whatever this is, I started thinking, if this could be it for us. They could kill us, take us, and who's ever going to know? Who's ever going to know? And I said, I looked at my family in a trance, and I said,
by the way, do you have ravens where you live right now?
Oh. I think they're crows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could hear it. Anyway, keep going.
They love it here. There's a lot of different birds. We have cardinals living in our bush.
Specifically, it was a corvid. I could tell from the call.
Oh, that's corvid. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, anyway, they are big fans of Sean. Sean throws peanuts to them. Sean loves animals and can't stand to see them have to search for food constantly. When we drive down the road, he will slam the brakes on. I'm like, what the hell? Lower my window, passenger window, and throw a fistful of peanuts out to squirrels, chipmunks, birds. So he's
anyway. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just
no, sorry. Yeah, so it's all lit up, and I said I need to get Sean. I need a man out here, and Sean is a man who has a gun. This whatever's going on, it's a flying saucers versus me in the backyard. So I go to get Sean. I said I have to, and as I stepped on the back steps to walk in the open kitchen door, where I could go to the stairs and down to Sean's bedroom, something stopped me. A voice in my head, a thought I had said, wait, don't go inside. You know that when you come back, it'll be gone. You'll never have another chance to see something like this. Just stay and watch it. Get Sean later. And I thought, oh, well, that's true. I know it'll be gone when I come back. And then I looked again at my family and I said, no. They slowed me down for like 20 seconds. I said, no, I need Sean. And I had no idea it was them doing these things, putting these obstacles. I run through the kitchen. I leap down the stairs 4 steps at a time, like a much younger man could do. And I put my hand on Sean's doorknob to throw it open and get him up. And for the 4th time, first the newspaper, then don't get under it, then don't go inside. And for the 4th time, they said, wait, stop. Don't, you better not throw open Sean's door, I'm thinking to myself, because if you startle him, he might panic and he has a gun and he could shoot you. He could shoot me. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't think about that. I better not. So I didn't open his door. I pounded on it with my full forearm, bam, 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 to the point, those cheap interior doors, it was going to crack if I hit it any harder. I said, Sean, get up. There's a UFO outside. Get up. Come on, hurry up. And I ran back up rather than wait for him because I didn't want, and by this time, now it was silver again. And it had moved past our house and was slowly going over the next street's houses, heading east. And interestingly, it was no longer a disc. It had turned sideways like a wheel, and it was going off that way. And this is where Sean has to take over. All right. That's what happened from where I was. And this is why we do this together. Because separately or alone, you can only get half of this incident that was the incident that changed the trajectory.
Let's take a quick break there. I want to just go back to the original question really quickly. Why do you think they didn't air this on the Good Trouble show?
I'll tell you, there were a number of times. I think Matt Ford was expecting the one and only this story that Chris is relaying. And we started to get into other things, like this reminded us of that. Like I remind him of another abduction that day, and we start getting into other things. And I think it took him by surprise. And he said, my audience is going to get confused. Let's go back to the 96 incident. And then there were also several times where we stated something, and then he asked a question that we had literally just answered, and it really made him look like he wasn't paying attention in the least. And I know he had just had another video on YouTube where the comments were calling him out for doing it to the guest on that episode. They're like, boy, this is the worst interview I've ever seen. He's asking questions the guy just answered. So I don't think he wanted another episode like that either. And then you put into the equation that a lot of the stuff we have to say is probably stuff he hasn't heard before. It's a little bit strange and different. And even the abduction people he's had on, they don't really get into many of the details like Chris and I did.
Yes, I felt that we were going to be pigeonholed into, I'm a witness, this one thing happened, this isolated thing. But the lens of the situation only makes sense when you understand that the aliens have been in our lives. The aliens have been in my life longer than this guy has been in my life. And another thing is we're starting to move up the ladder of interest. Better podcasts, better interviewers, serious researchers reaching out to us. And I did not want to record a show where, it's a one-time thing and I was just a witness. Because then when we go back to speaking about more what it's all about for us, the depth of our alien contact, the longevity of it, it's
like a longitudinal study, right?
Yeah. So I did not want to
non-human intelligence.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought it would weaken our who we are. It would be just a slice, a fraction. But I think he refused to even look at the revised information we sent to him. It was clear he was not prepared for this. And as a result, it was a bit of a struggle because he would try to force it back to this very narrow parameters. And we were expanding it to let him know about our mother's abductions. And I think where we really lost him is when we started talking about being introduced to hybrid children. That was where you could see he just checked out. Just the glasses went blank.
Well, here's my theory, okay? And this is pure speculation.
Sure.
Okay, because I have nothing against Matt Ford or anything like that. But when you both familiar with what a modified limited hangout is?
Not particularly.
Okay,
I know those in words.
In the intelligence community, when things start to leak that you don't want to get out, usually it's like the tip of the iceberg. Typically, there's an iceberg of secrets, right? And sometimes that outer layer gets exposed. So what you do to cover up deeper layers is you acknowledge some aspects of truth, but then you also kind of avoid or cover up things that you don't want people to hear just yet. Okay?
I think that's a lot what John Blitch said.
Interesting. Because I haven't talked to John about any of this at all.
Because I wrote him and said, our episode is not going to air. And that's basically what he told us as well. So he thinks similar to you, apparently.
Well, I'll take a little pride in that. I'm a man in his 60s.
Well, no, there's more to this. There's more to this because I'm not just like, this is informed speculation.
Yep.
Yeah, this is informed speculation. So that particular show was always tied very closely to figures in the Democratic Party, right? So there's a political, and that's neither, it could be tied to figures in the Republican Party, and I'd be saying the same thing. But so it started after my podcast, and it just kind of rocketed out of nowhere. And that's usually a sign of kind of an astroturfed operation. So, and again, nothing against Matt Ford.
I think I heard that same phrase from somebody else.
Yeah, someone commented on our situation, and that's the term they used. I hadn't heard that before.
By the way, I could be completely wrong. This is pure speculation.
Right, I get it, yeah.
You don't sound very wrong to us at all. So.
He's also very tied to Lou Elizondo, and Lou Elizondo spent his entire career in counterintelligence.
Right.
And counterintelligence folks, they're spy catchers. Their sole focus is to protect programs and do so by trying to figure out who the rats are, right? Who people who are exposing information and things like that. So again, nothing against Lou. He's just doing his job. And I could be completely wrong because there's probably a lot of nuances around this. Like they want to advance certain aspects of the narrative, but others they want to contain. And one of the things that they want to contain is the stories of longitudinal, or what appear to be longitudinal, life studies, biological studies of human beings, as well as collection of gametes, semen, ova, etc., and this hybrid stuff. But while individual stories you have to take one by one, there are certain commonalities in all these things. So, for instance, it's not the first time I'm talking to people of Irish descent or Celtic descent who've had experiencer stories, right? It's not a coincidence that I could pick out a corvid just from listening, right? I have this weird affinity with animals that I have, like, Celtic ancestry, right? I don't know if it's related to that. John Ramirez, who's former CIA, has noted, again, it could be disinformation. You always have to layer that into everything you think about. But he talked about Celtic and Cherokee ancestry being commonality. So anyway, what I think happened is that the Good Trouble Show has a purpose. It is limited disclosure, and they're trying to kind of rein in some things, but allow other things to go. And I think your story was probably
too much,
judged by who's ever running this program to be too much at the time. Anyway, I'll get that out there, because I'm trying to keep all these threads so that we're moving along, because I'm sure I'm going to get a dozen comments like, you cut off Chris in the middle of the story and we didn't even hear Sean's side of the story. Not my Sean, but the other side.
That is what we hear always. Will somebody please shut up, Chris, and let Sean speak? So, actually...
No, I'm talking about me. They don't want to hear me talk.
Oh, you!
So, that whole monologue, I'm going to get annihilated for. But anyway.
No, it was brilliant, and it makes perfect sense to us. You do have an excellent grasp on the situation, and we appreciate hearing this, and we appreciate the new information. And a couple
you know who doesn't appreciate it? You know who doesn't appreciate it?
Yes, I do. You know who doesn't appreciate it? It's the Grays. They're the ones that we're upset with. My battery, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm going to have to go get my cord and plug in. You can still continue and talk to Sean.
Yeah. Before I went back to the Good Trouble Show, we left it off at that same incident in 1996.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about Sean's side. So it's perfect timing anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Just make sure it doesn't run out on you.
Right.
All right. I'll tell you where my end of this 96 incident, the first part I remember is actually being up in the sky, looking down into the backyard and seeing my family at the pool. And I didn't panic that I have an aerial view of my backyard. I felt like I was supposed to be there. I didn't feel out of place at all. But that's the first memory I have, is looking down and seeing everybody. And I got excited that people were over. They were cooking out. People were in the pool. I wanted to go swimming. So I asked, can I go swimming? And that's the first I notice off to my right, maybe 8 or 10 feet away. There's a short gray alien standing parallel with me, facing the same direction. And he leans forward and looks off to the left, which is the direction I would be to him. And he says, telepathically, he says, "We're taking you to bed. You can get up and go swimming." He even emphasized the word up. And then I know, and let me explain the view too. It's not as if I was looking out a window or anything. There was no porthole or window, anything like that. I could see unobstructed the whole house and the backyard. I don't know why. It was as if I was looking through the craft, as if it wasn't there, the wall of it. And then after he tells me they're taking me to bed, I can get up and go swimming, that's when I start to notice lights reflecting off the pool water. Now, at the time, I thought it was the reflection of the sun, and I said to myself, boy, that looks really weird. It must be because of the angle I'm at. But I could see like little points of light like bouncing off the pool water, which must have been at the same time Chris saw the thing lighting up with the pins of light. So, and I was completely fine standing there. I could talk. I was standing there on my own. I could see everything just fine. And then all of a sudden, we are in the basement. Well, actually, just before that, I noticed 2 aliens standing right behind me, right behind either shoulder. And they're just like faced forward right at me.
And these are short grays?
These ones are taller. These ones are all just about my height. And
okay, so tall grays, though, the classic gray.
Yes. It could be some are taller than this. I'm not sure how tall they get, but these 2 were just a little bit shorter than I was. And all of a sudden, we're in the basement. And I feel as if I'm drugged or drunk as soon as we're in the basement. I would liken it to anesthesia, which I've had many times going through operations in my life. And I've got an arm over each alien's shoulders as if I'm a drunk and they're helping me to bed. And that's basically what they were doing. My feet, they were moving, but really not doing all the work. They were helping me. And I looked off to the right side, the one on my right, and I thanked him. And he didn't say anything. As we're walking through the family room in the basement towards my bedroom. And so I thanked him again. His response, his exact words are, yeah, if you can believe it or not. That's what he said. Next thing I know, I'm in the bed. I don't remember being placed into the bed, but I'm in my bed. And I hear off to the side one of the aliens say, and he's in an absolute panic. He says, "He's coming. We're going to get caught." And I've never seen anybody as scared as him. And I did 20 years as a police officer. This guy was terrified. But there was the other one was standing at the foot of my bed, and he was cool as a cucumber. He said to the other one, "No, he's not. Not yet." And I had to know who they were talking about. It took every ounce of energy I had to sit up in bed. And what I pictured in my mind was, is there some supreme being? Who are they afraid of catching them? You know, is there some supreme being coming here? And are they not supposed to be doing this? Is what I was thinking. So I sat up in bed. And at this point, they're both at the foot of my bed. And I say, "Who's coming?" And they both turned around to face me and said in unison, slowly, "Go to sleep." And with that, I had no choice but to lay back down into bed. And next thing I know, I hear pounding on my door and Chris saying, "Sean, get up. There's a UFO outside." And I tried to answer him using telepathy because I was just using it with these aliens. And I was saying to him, "Of course there is. They just left." But then I took a second. I was like, well, like, what am I saying? What's going on here? And I saw I was in bed, so I threw off the covers, ran upstairs. I had my gym shorts on or my sweatpants, and I came out, and of course the thing's gone by the time I get up here. It's bright as can be. I still feel somewhat groggy from whatever they did to me. And I'm assuming they teleported me from the craft right into the basement because they didn't see us float down or anything like that. And that might have been why the craft had to light up like that. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But it's not the only time they teleported me. But I believe they teleported me into the room along with them. And from that point, they carried me to bed. And like I said, by the time I got here, it was gone and everybody was telling me about it. And I was just standing there trying to wrestle with what just happened because I remembered what had just happened. And all these other memories just started coming back to me.
So right here, the man who scared the aliens. I'm the dude who panicked the aliens. I wish I had known.
Look, if I were this thin, frail thing with a giant head, I'd be terrified if you came tearing into the room.
Well, what's he going to do, though? I mean, in reality, I mean, if they can control me, they could control him. There's something they could have done to paralyze him. I don't know. But
maybe anger kind of makes it more difficult. Like just high range of emotional anger makes it very difficult for them to hijack the system. And I'm sure if he saw these things in your room, given his size relative to them, like there have been instances or abductees have claimed that they've killed these things, like just grabbed them by the throat, broke their necks. Like they're super frail is my understanding, but I don't know. I'm just speculating.
We hear that too. And what we have to say isn't really popular with anyone. First of all, it's bad news. Second of all, we disagree with so much of what other abductees have experienced, and we can't speak for other people, but we can only speak for ourselves. And these things are stronger than they look. I often speculate what would have happened if I ignored those thoughts to stop, to not open the door. I would have opened that door and I would have caught them right there. And you know what I would have done? I would have collapsed to the ground, curled up in a fetal position, and soiled my pants. Is what I would have done. It wouldn't have been a great battle for humanity. I would have lost my mind. But I wish I had been able to interrupt it further. But what happened is the way it worked out, it liberated us. Finally, after 30, with my mom, 40 years of mental control and slavery and only knowing part of your life and not the most important parts. What happened was, because I woke Sean up, I tried and got him upstairs. And when Sean came upstairs, he was wincing and in pain. He was like a guy who'd been in the hot box in a prison yard for 30 days and coming out and seeing the sun. He was in pain and noticed it. And I'm trying to engage him. Sean, you wouldn't believe it. The flying saucer was right here. It's real. Who knew? Who knew these things are real? And he didn't say anything. But what we did is we hopped in his convertible LeBaron and we drove out the direction it ambled away from in hopes of seeing it. But, it just veered one way or another, and the country roads are few and far between. And so I said, Sean, you wouldn't believe it. It was crazy. It was a flying saucer and everything. And he said to me, I know they were bringing me back. And I thought, wow, I woke Sean up too soon, right? He's carrying over some dream. And I said the most comical thing. Sean, listen, nobody's talking about alien abduction. We're just talking about a flying saucer that materialized over your room and hovered there for 10 minutes. That's all we're talking about. Like it was such a leap. And he said, no. They took me. They were bringing me back. And I was actually a little concerned. I thought Sean maybe it's easy for mental illness or some kind of break. I was scared because Sean is the rock
to coincide with the UFO that happens to be outside the house.
I get it. It was irrational of me. I get it. That's how closed off I was from the reality of my own life. Mm-hmm. So I said, oh, no. And he said, he's getting annoyed. He says, listen, they've taken you lots. And I said,
I said, they've taken you too.
Oh, yeah. And I said,
there's the cop coming out. Just effects.
Yes, that's him. I'm the loose talking comedian. And I said, listen, Sean, condescendingly, I think if I was abducted by aliens, I would know it, right? And he said, don't you remember the time that Mom screamed? And what was the quote? She screamed?
She said, they're back. And she said it screamingly, in a screaming voice. Why do they have to come back? And that's when he finished the quote.
Why do they always have to come back? She was screaming. I've never heard a woman or an adult scream. I was a kid. He was even younger. And it was horrific. And that's what she screamed. They came back. Why do they always come back? Why do they always have to come back? And I'm wondering what she's talking about. Who came back? And so I was running from the living room to the kitchen.
But you remembered it immediately when I started.
When he started the quote, I finished it with him. And it hit me like a bowling ball in the face. In a horror movie or something where they do the dolly shot where the star sees something horrific or incredible and like the camera kind of zooms in on him, kind of zooms forward, a dolly shot. And that's what it was like. The world went like this. We're in a car. And it's a good thing I wasn't driving because I'd have driven us into a tree. It hit me. I remembered that. I remembered all of that day. I remembered all of it. And I remembered everything. Me interrupting Sean. First of all, Mom forcing me to look at it. That thing could have happened. And we wouldn't be talking to you. We wouldn't know. But Mom told me. I took over. I got Sean. And I timed it so well that they weren't able to put him under, which apparently has something to do with the way they cover memories, because he remembered, and he remembered everything. And over the course of the next couple of days, really the next 48 hours, all those pieces, they fell into place. And they were familiar. They were completely familiar. Not only did I remember them, I remembered what I was thinking at the time. I remembered what I said. I remembered what they said. We recovered our memories, not through dream imagery or that would lead us to a psychotherapist for hypnotic regression. We earned them back by interrupting them, by stopping their procedure. They were exposed to us, and the shock. It was the shock. And then Sean just had to remind me of that one time, and I realized he's absolutely right.
Let's
it changed our lives. Well, I just want to
stop
say
right here. Yeah.
I just want to say. Oh, okay.
And then what we'll do is we'll get into those memories in the next episode. So thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And the audience, I'm sure, is really intrigued to hear about what comes next. So thank you both.
If you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever I post new content. Thank you. Now, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support it, there are several things you can do. In fact, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing you can do is just buy my books. I got plenty of books out in the market right now, and I would prefer that folks buy a book rather than giving me direct support, because they get something out of it. They get a real tangible product. The second way you can support me is by becoming a member on YouTube or becoming a patron on Patreon. And just go to either site and it'll explain everything. The third way you can support the channel is by checking out my merch site, which is here. There's plenty of stuff that you can get to support the channel. And I'd appreciate that you have it and can wear it. Not only do you help support the channel, but you also help promote the channel, and I appreciate that. The fourth way that you can support the channel, and this is really easy, is anytime you want to buy something on Amazon, literally just go to the description below and click on any link, literally any link. The channel gets a cut of that, and it costs you no extra money. You just go through the link, as I'm part of the Amazon Affiliates Club. The fifth and final way you can support the channel is through donations. Now, I don't prefer these because it's more of an expression of gratitude, but you don't really get anything out of it as a subscriber to the channel. However, if you decide to do these options, there's two options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which is a separate site, and there's also, you can go through YouTube with either a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. Again, I prefer Buy Me a Coffee because that organization takes less money than Amazon does. But either way, I appreciate any support you are willing to give the channel. So thank you very much and keep watching. I really appreciate it.